Welcome to the Medical Radiography Information Session. This event is being presented by Denise Pulser, the program head. Before we get started, however, the British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. Today's agenda. We're going to start with welcome and introductions. I'm Julie. I am one of the marketing coordinators in the School of Health Sciences. We have Denise Pulser, who is the program head for medical radiography. We have DJ Leiter, who is the program coordinator for the program. And we have Jessie Taylor from program advising. We're going to go through a presentation and have an open floor for some questions and answers. Okay, Denise, it's all yours.
Thanks. So yes, you can. We and I'll talk a little bit about it. We do have mobile equipment, and we tend to be able to go anywhere within reason. So, okay. So Julie, are we going to stop sharing and try? Or are you going to try and run the video from here? Oh, okay. There we go. That would be my answer. Okay. So, you know, when you're looking for things, you can never find them, but here we go. I hope you can all see that. So we're just going to run a quick video regarding the program itself and a little bit about the profession. And actually this video is on the website as well.
What I love about medical radiation is the variety. It is different every day, and that's what makes it so exciting. And we'll go from there, okay? All right. As a medical radiation technologist, we use general X-ray machines. We use a fluoroscopy unit, CT, and mammography. The most rewarding thing about this job is when patients tell you how much they appreciate what you've done. That's why I love my job.
Okay, so if we're going to do
the medical radiography program at BCIT is a 2-year diploma program. You do a term of academics where we teach you the theory of the positioning and the anatomy, we teach you the physics and the equipment, and then the next term you go out to clinical and practice everything that we've taught you. The students practice on equipment at BCIT that they will be able to find at most clinical sites. And the integration of VR is completely unique to BCIT. It helps the students learn the orientation of the anatomy and how it relates to the type of positions that we try and put our patients into. Once our students graduate from our program, they are fully prepared to write the National Certification Exam, the CAMRT, which allows them to work across Canada. The reason I love this profession is because of the changing technology and the time that I am able to spend with patients one-on-one, communicating with them and getting to know them. This is a really rewarding profession.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the profession itself and the program. So a medical radiation technologist uses highly technical equipment that produces ionizing radiation to create images of patients' bones and their organ systems. The images are interpreted by a radiologist who will then provide a diagnosis and a recommendation for treatment if it is required. The profession is a combination of technical and human skills. So our role is to ensure patient safety by understanding the equipment and how the radiation is produced and how it interacts with the human body, and how to manage that to keep the patient safe. Our human skills are used to ensure that our patients are comfortable and that they are treated respectfully while they are in our care. Due to the advancement of technologies, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, our profession is constantly changing. Exam times have decreased. The image quality itself has improved. The production of the images is just that much faster. And so it allows us to do more and different types of exams. Julie, next slide, please. So what do we train you in? You heard a little bit about it on the video clip, and I think a lot of these were mentioned in there. The most common is the general radiography. And back in the day when I trained, we used to use film. So we used to have to get, what you would consider a piece of, used to say negatives for pictures, but we used to have to use chemicals to develop the film. But now everything is computerized. There's two types of systems in general radiography. There's computed radiography, which again uses a computer, except that we would expose a plate and then actually have to process the plate. So it just takes a little bit longer, but the computer manipulates the data and produces an image on a computer screen. The other one is DR, so it's digital radiography. And in that case, as soon as the plate or the detector itself is exposed, the image comes right up onto the monitor. So again, the use of technology in the use of computers. Computed tomography, or you probably would have known it or know it as CT scanning, again, uses a computer, but in this case, instead of it just producing a single image, it actually produces slices. So it kind of gives you a relational image, so that you have to have a relational perspective of the anatomy itself. So it allows us to look at soft tissues, organs, and bones with a three-dimensional perspective. A computer is used to control the motion of the source delivering the radiation, so the X-ray tube, and the detectors themselves that collect the data and then process the data to produce an image. The X-ray beam and the detectors actually spin around the patient as the patient actually moves through the cycling detectors. And so by doing that, it's almost like getting a spiraling image. And then the computer will take this data and produce a whole series of slices. So it's just like taking, say, the torso of the body, cutting it up into slices, and then spreading them out and looking at them. Further computer data manipulation, we can produce 3D renderings of the organ systems or whatever it is that they're actually looking at. So whether it's bone or whether it is soft tissue. And I have an image to show you of a 3D rendering, which we'll show you shortly. I know Julie doesn't like this picture, but I put it in every time. So actually, when you're looking at this, I'm not showing you, you're not seeing the actual slices, but the computer program has collected the data from the slices and then produced this image. When you look at this, this is the facial bones. And of note, you can, if you look at the left side of the screen at the corner of the jaw, which is called the mandible, the patient actually has a fracture. So, and it's very clear, we can actually see little vessels sticking out. So that's how detailed this information is. Thanks. So Julie, can we just go back to the previous slide? And just have a couple more things to cover off there. So the next piece I want to talk about is fluoroscopy. So this is actually dynamic imaging. This is equipment that allows us to take longer exposures, and actually it's like creating a video. So you can actually watch a system or the function of an organ in motion. The most common for us is doing swallowing studies. So a patient that may have had a stroke may have difficulty swallowing. So we give them this lovely pasty white stuff to drink. It's called barium. And we actually watch the process of swallowing. The other things that we can do on this equipment is a radiologist will use it to, say, advance a needle into a joint space, whether or not they're introducing a contrast or an X-ray dye, or whether they're pulling out fluid for testing, and so they can use it for that. We also go to the OR using the fluoroscopy units to with orthopedic surgeons so that they can realign broken bones and actually put plates and screws in to make sure that the bone heals correctly. The next is interventional procedures, and in this case, you kind of use fluoroscopy and CT together, but the procedures themselves are more specialized. We're seeing an increase in interventional radiography, especially recently, because it helps reduce surgeries and what they can do, or if a radiologist can actually do a procedure to help a patient so that they don't have to go to the OR, their recovery time is just that much faster. So we're seeing that as well. and we do train our students for that. The other is mobile imaging. So this was our poll question. So we can go anywhere to a patient within reason. If again, we can take the equipment and go to the operating room. If there's like emergencies or in the trauma bays, if there's a trauma, we tend to take our equipment to the patients, or in some hospitals, they actually have specialized equipment that is in the trauma bays already. And so we can do imaging there, and we can go to the morgue to do like forensic studies. So say if they were investigating the cause of death of a body that was brought in, then we can go and to actually do imaging, to help out with the study. And then lastly, mammography. So screening mammography, and the technologist that was on the video did talk about that in the end. So this is just using a specific range of the energy of the X-ray beam to image breast tissue, which can be quite sensitive. So, next slide, Julie. Next one. There we go. So the program itself, the program starts in January and runs for 6 consecutive terms. For the first year, we alternate between academics and clinical. So you do a term of academics. And again, as I said in the video, we teach you all the theory that we can about anatomy, the equipment, the positioning, and make sure that you're prepared to go out and then do a term of clinical. The first clinical term is fairly short, but we make sure that that you try that you're able to do as much as possible while you're there. When the students are on campus, for their academic terms, we use simulation for them to practice positioning on one another, but because you can't expose one another, we have mannequins and phantoms that allow them to take images and actually review the images from their positioning. Students practice using equipment in positioning and imaging sciences lab to get a better understanding of the physics behind the X-ray production and how the equipment works. And again, shortly I'll show you a video clip on a program that we have that is unique to our program. It's called Be the Beam, and it was created by one of our instructors who retired recently. And it's almost like if you've ever seen or heard of the yellow school bus, where you can actually, it's interactive, it's VR, but you can actually see inside the X-ray room and inside the X-ray equipment itself. So let's see if I can get this going. And I'll probably just start it here and then just run it.
As we enter the X-ray room, we observe the operator control panel, the X-ray tube, and table. The medical imaging room accommodates a stretcher and wheelchair for ease of transferring the patient to the X-ray table. Note the location of the generator, lead aprons, supply cart, and miscellaneous items necessary for an X-ray procedure. A sink, countertops, and storage complete the room. Please feel free to explore the X-ray room.
I'm just going to jump ahead a bit. So you can actually see information when you touch the question marks. And you people are probably more attuned into VR than I am, but the students really find it helpful, especially so that they can practice on their own. And I wanted to see if we can get to the part where they actually show the inside of the X-ray tube, because this is not something that we would normally be able to see. I wonder if I skipped past it. Now, I probably missed it, and I don't want to spend too much time playing with this. So, but it's interactive. Students can do it on their own, and it allows them to actually see the inside of the X-ray tube and the equipment itself, and they can play with it that way. And so that should be the last time we jump out And actually, Julie, can we go to the previous slide again? Sorry. Oh, thanks. So also part of the program is the clinical rotations. I'll talk a little bit more about those in details at a later slide. But students go to 3 different clinical rotations, but only 2 different sites. So you'll go to one site for your first site, and then your last 2 clinical rotations are at the same site, at a different site, but they are the same for those 2 terms. What else do I want to tell you about them? Oh my gosh. Hang on. Close. Okay. There we go. Okay, next slide, please. So clinical practicums, as I said, that there's 3 actual clinical practicums that are spread out throughout the program. They are, the students usually go to the sites. There's a clinical instructor on site who is actually an employee from the site, so they're very, very well versed in the equipment there, the protocols that are required at that site, because every site tends to be a little bit different. There's a total of 48 weeks of clinical time, and actually a bit of an additional time because we actually have a specific CT rotation. And I think I have another slide that will cover that shortly. When the students go out, and especially in the first clinical term, you work very closely with your clinical instructor and with the certified technologists, so that you're always with somebody, making sure that you're positioning patients correctly, and that you're following all the correct steps to ensure that patient is safe and that you're safe yourself. And then as you move through the program and go into further clinical terms and get more practice and more confidence and more competence, then you will progress to what's called indirect supervision. That means you do a little bit more and more on your own, where that person, the technologist or the CI, tends to step back and just watches you work through the cases. You're expected to do a variety of shifts. I do talk a little bit about this, but actually, if we go to the next slide, we should be able to get a little bit more information here. When the students are in clinical, they are required to do theory courses, so online courses, not expected to come back to BCIT for these courses, but we do give you 1 academic day a week to do the content and to write exams for those courses. We have 18 clinical sites throughout the Lower Mainland and in the interior and Kootenay areas. We have 6 sites that are interior Kootenay, and the other 12 sites are within the Lower Mainland. And as I mentioned previously, the students go to 2 different clinical sites. So you get a little bit of experience. And the purpose behind that is that we send you to a larger trauma center. We'll also send you to a smaller community-styled hospital, or say a hospital like Children's that does more specific imaging for their clientele. Next slide, please, Julie. So just some fun facts, and I have probably touched on most of these already, but we are a 24/7 profession, and what that usually means is that like a hospital, most hospitals have an emergency department that's open 24 hours a day. And that means that there should be or will be an X-ray technologist on staff. You know, the larger centers have more than one on the midnights, but a smaller site might only have 1. I know that some of the smaller rural sites that we send our students to actually just have the technologist on call. So, you know, if they get called in the middle of the night, the technologist calls you and you both go to the hospital to have that lovely experience of waking up in the middle of the night. And as I mentioned before, we do both diagnostic and interventional X-rays or procedures. So we just don't take X-rays of bones and chests. We do actual interventional cases. And again, you know, this is such a so much faster recovery time for patients instead of actually having to have surgery of any sort. Direct patient care. Our profession is very tactile, so we work very closely with our patients, and we always say that our communication skills have to be, you know, very a good, let's just say good, just to make sure that we are communicating with our patients. We're both speaking to them, having them understand what procedures they're having done, but also listening when they're telling us their history and the reason why they've been asked to come for procedures. So that's very important. Our graduates and technologists work in both hospital and private clinics. So there's opportunities in both those places. And again, we do mobile radiography. I'm going to say that a good portion of our time is spent in the OR. So most sites will have a dedicated OR technologist. We do pacemaker insertions. If somebody falls and breaks a hip, we do hip pinnings. We're in there doing, if somebody has their gallbladder removed, any orthopedic case that you can think of, broken bones of any sort. A lot of back surgeries are done with our help as well with our equipment, the fluoro equipment. So we tend to be in there quite a bit. And we're usually in on most trauma cases in the emergency department. So we do go everywhere. I was actually, when I first started as a student, there was a team from the hospital that I was at that actually went to the aquarium when they still had orcas and actually x-rayed the jawbone of the orca. That was a little bit more involved. We actually had to rent a truck to get the portable on there, but yes, we do go everywhere. Next slide, please, Julie. So where can our graduates go? So as a technologist works in a hospital, they accumulate hours and seniority. So as they kind of make their way up the ladder, or opportunities do open up for them. So usually one of the first things that would come up would be a shift supervisor, and that would just be managing the flow with a small group of individuals that are on your shift with you. The next step up would be a site supervisor. So it wouldn't just be the shift, you would actually be managing the entire department within that hospital. The next step up would be a site supervisor or a manager. And then again, their scope gets larger because it's not just the X-ray department. It would involve sonography, nuclear medicine, so more of the other diagnostics as well. And then the next step up from there would be the health authority imaging directors. And so in that case, they're actually looking after multiple hospitals versus just one. So, I mean, if you're interested in that, those possibilities are there. Clinical informatics and PACS administration. So if somebody has an interest in data analysis or educating and training end users for systems like some of the risk systems that they're putting in the hospital now that will hold patient information, there's a lot of training involved there. So we've had several of our grads move into those positions to do training for that. If you're interested in teaching, there's opportunities to be an instructor on site. And that was actually, one of my jobs when I was out in clinical as a clinical instructor. So I would work with the students that came from BCIT. There's always the possibility of coming to BCIT as an instructor. So I kind of went from a clinical instructor and then came to BCIT to work as an instructor here. And now I'm the program head. I've already talked about the health authority imaging directors. Some of our graduates move on to work with some of our vendors like GE and Siemens. So they're product specialists. So they work with vendors or hospitals that maybe purchase their equipment and they go in and they teach them how to use it. So they're called application specialists, or even in the sales end of these with these companies. For further opportunities, our graduates can do a little bit more with education, and we will talk a little bit more about this when we get into the program advising slides and the laddering opportunities, but there is like an MRI certificate. The other thing is that our graduates write a national certification exam so that they are certified to work anywhere within Canada or almost everywhere within Canada. But it also opens up the opportunity to write the American exam, which is called under the ARRT, which gives you the opportunities to work in the United States as well. So there's a lot of opportunities. Next slide, please. Actually, I think we're on the slide after that. Okay, So now I'll be reviewing with you some of the entrance requirements and the admissions process, along with briefly discussing some key student services that are available to you at BCIT. And I think at that point in time, I think Jesse will take over and speak to you regarding those. I think we need to back up one more slide. There it is.
Sorry, it was out of control. It was moving by itself. I don't know what happened.
I know. It did that to me earlier today too. So I don't know. Something is going on and it's possessed. So as I mentioned before, the program itself is 24 continuous months, so 2 years. We have one intake every January. And the department will select applicants after the deadline dates. And so we have one application window open January 2nd, so it's open now until June 30th. Once that closes, then there's another process that happens, and I'll explain that in a later slide. What qualities are we looking for in our applicants? As I mentioned before, they need to have strong communication skills, ability to work independently and in a team. And as I mentioned before, like when you're on a midnight shift, you could possibly be on your own, or working as a part of like the trauma team or the OR team. Have to have the ability to work well with others and communicate well. Excellent physical and mental health and time stress management skills. The profession is quite physical, even though we've come a long way. The equipment is very heavy. We still do some patient transferring, so you have to be, physically fit for that. And it can be quite stressful at times, so you have to have skills to manage that for yourself. Strong decision-making skills and problem-solving skills. And as you could tell from all my talking about the computers that we use, so computer literacy, 3D visualization, manual dexterity, and good hand-eye coordination skills. Next slide, please. So the steps for applying. So you would fill out the online application like that process is fairly straightforward. So once the application window opens, and it is open now, you can log in and review the online application. You can work on filling out the application at your own pace. It does not go to admissions until you actually pay the application fee. The date you apply does not have an impact on your application, so it's not sort of a first come and that person gets in. It is a competitive process. And you have until the application deadline to submit your application. So regarding the process itself, you will firstly need to review the requirements, and we do have a slide further on that we talk about requirements, and then they actually review the application processing dates so that you don't miss out because you've missed a date. You'll have to upgrade if necessary. So when you're looking at the requirements and say you don't have a specific course, or maybe you feel that what you have is not sufficient, please contact program advising and they can help you in that case and make sure that you do get what you need. BCIT does offer upgrading courses on many subjects, and again, contacting program advising to get this information is usually the best way to go. Ensure when you apply online that you have all of your required documents, such as transcripts, ready to scan and upload in PDF files. You would go to bcit.ca/admissions, and there is a guide that will give you step-by-step, will walk you step-by-step through the application process. Once you are ready to apply online, then you would go to bcit.ca/apply. Next slide, please. One thing I forgot to mention, though, was the application fee for domestic students is $90, just so that you're aware of that, and that the process is entirely online. When it comes to the requirements, so we're just going to talk a little bit about that. The test course options for meeting entrance requirements. If you're not sure, please contact program advising. because when you're looking at this, if you are missing something, it's just better to talk to them to know for sure that you are getting what it is that you require. So, I mean, you can read it as easily as I can read it out loud, but I will do that anyways. Proficiency in speaking and listening. So 2 years of a full-time education in English in an English-speaking country or equivalent test or course. English 12, English Studies 12. And you can see that these three from high school are 73% requirement, pre-cal 12 and physics 12. And then we do have post-secondary requirements. We have 3 credits of English literature composition. We do have a research course in the program itself. And so the expectation is that you wouldn't do a full-blown research project, but there are papers and article reviews that you would have to write. And so that the writing skills would come from your post-secondary requirements versus us teaching you those type of skills. The other is 6 credits of human anatomy and physiology. So we do teach you radiographic anatomy and relational anatomy. We have 4 pathology courses in the program, and that's where the physiology comes into play. But the expectation is that you come into the program with the basic human anatomy and physiology, and that comes from the post-secondary. Other entrance requirements are CASPER. So CASPER is an online test. The test will utilize everyday scenarios. It's usually presented as a moral dilemma, and that there is no right or wrong answer to it. So you can't really study for this, and it's not like a knowledge-based test where you could study for it. So if you sign up for an account with Casper when you're applying, there is like a full 12-section Casper sample test available online. So that you could actually, get to see a sample before you actually have to go through the process. There is a lot of information on the Casper site to help you prepare for the exam. So please spend some time reviewing that information prior to jumping right in and doing the test. There's also a mandatory applicant questionnaire that has to be completed, and this is where you would give us any extra information you want about yourself, anything to give us a sense of, where your interests are and your interests in the profession are. So this would be your opportunity to do that. So that's a requirement as well. On the right side, you'll see another list, and basically this is how do you make your application better. So math, biology, physics requirements, if they're completed within the last 5 years, it's usually a preference for us, but it's not a requirement. Final grades rather than applying with midterm grades. But if you do have midterm grades, please make sure that you apply with those so that you are on our radar. And when you're for your post-secondary education, not even specifically to the courses that required, but that your GPA is quite strong. Any related volunteer or work experience, there is a required volunteer component once you're actually accepted into the program. So even doing some ahead of time shows us how keen you can be. Demonstrated interest in the field. So what have you done to investigate about the profession? And post-secondary education with a focus on human anatomy and physiology and or health in general. Next slide, please. So for this slide, so as mentioned as part of the online application, Julie's flying all over the place again. You'll need to upload documents for a timely assessment to be completed. So you can download official digital transcripts, or you can convert your transcripts or documents into PDF files. There is information on how to convert documents available on our website. For example, if you need to, you can just take pictures of the official transcripts and then save them as PDF files and upload them that way. Please ensure that you upload all required documents to minimize delays in application processing. It becomes quite a long process when you're bouncing back and forth with the registrar's office. Okay, well, you still need this document, you still need that document. So just try and make sure that you have everything uploaded as required. And as you can see, if you've taken any upgrading courses or the requirements at BCIT, you don't actually have to upload your transcripts. That admissions can access those directly through BCIT's system. Next slide, please, Julie. So this is the process for admissions. So you admissions review applications to ensure requirements have been met. So once you've applied, there's always somebody in admissions monitoring or looking through what has been submitted so far. And if you're missing something, they'll come back to you and say, you're missing this or whatever. Once your application is complete, then admissions forwards that information to our program for review. After the application deadline date is closed, so for us right now, it's June 30th, we would then review all of the applicants and do a short list and select our applicants. Admissions is the one that actually sends an acceptance letter to you, and the program follows up with a welcome letter that is more about a detailed checklist of things to do prior to starting, but the acceptance letter does come from admissions. And then you would have to pay a commitment fee, and the commitment fee is $500 for domestic students. So laddering opportunities, I mentioned a little bit of this before. So our graduates have the potential to go on to further education. Some of them are at BCIT and some of them are not. So magnetic resonance imaging advanced certificate, and it's also can be tied into the Bachelor of Health Sciences. So just as the X-ray technologist or a medical radiographer writes a certification exam, that's a national exam, it would be the same thing for MRI. And MRI is right now is a certificate that is online. So I think it's 6 to 7 courses. It includes a smaller clinical component as well. And then again, once that is complete, then you would write another national exam. So that opportunity is there. Bachelor of Health Sciences from Thompson River University. There's also Health Leadership Advanced Certificate offered through BCIT. So again, if you're interested in eventually moving on into management or any management positions or supervisor positions, this would be a good path to follow. And there's a BCIT also offers the Bachelor of Technology in Technology Management. So there's plenty of opportunities for more education to help move you further up the ladder. And I think that's the last slide for me. And now we have Jesse from advising.
Good evening, everyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some topics that are moving away from academics, or the discussion specific to that. So I want to let you know about BCIT's committed support to students in a holistic sense. So we want you to succeed not only within your academics, but also outside of school. Some student services that are available to you as prospective students, and some of these others are going to be available to you once you become an enrolled student at BCIT. So some of the areas that I want to mention, if you happen to be of an Indigenous background, BCIT's Indigenous Initiatives Department is there to support you, ensuring a smooth transition into your first year. So they would offer peer-to-peer mentorship, a welcoming gathering place, and provide clarification on Indigenous funding options. As well, BCIT has numerous different awards, scholarships, and bursaries that will be listed for reference on our Financial Aid and Awards webpage. I'd like to mention one specifically, being the President's Anxious Award. And so the reason we would usually mention this award is because it's unique in the way that the selection for it is based not only on academic standing or achievement, but also based on volunteer and community service. I would encourage you to contact the financial aid office department directly to find out more information on the different options beyond student loans, the different options for awards, scholarships, and bursaries, and so on. BCIT is also committed to providing assistance to students with permanent or temporary disabilities. If you've been accepted to a program and believe you may need accommodation to be successful, I would encourage you to connect with the Accessibility Services Department, which is located in the SW1 building, one of the main buildings. Carrying on with another department with BCIT Student Health Services. So we do have a health clinic that's located at the main campus in Burnaby. This department would provide medical care for current BCIT students year-round. You get sniffles, go and see one of the nurses. If you might maybe fall and scuff your leg, you can also access their services there and either see one of the nurses or hopefully the doctor is there to attend to you. We also have our counseling and student development department located essentially within the same space as the health services area. They're there to help enhance your educational performance and maximize your success as a student at BCIT. So talking about things like preparation for examinations, study habits, time management skill sets, things like that can help you perform well within your program at BCIT. And the last of the service areas I want to talk about is the Recreation Services Department. So this department would promote and encourage, trying to enable those to proceed with the practice of physical well-being. So that department would consider recreation, as well as we would, an integral part of campus life. And they're welcoming to all students to enjoy the services provided by that department. So finishing up with the services, I'm going to move along to comment on how you can make contact with us further in the program advising department. So our department consists of a group that assists with full-time program inquiries as well as part-time studies inquiries. I'm just primarily focusing on how you can connect with us as we assist students for the full-time studies. So you can reach out to us by phone. We do have live call periods that take place 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in the mornings from 8:30 to 11:30. And we would just have you call the main line, the main phone number at BCIT to connect with us in that way. I'm just trying to admit somebody back into the session. They might have got disconnected there. There's also drop-in advising services. So we do offer those in the afternoons between 1:30 and 3:30, 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And we have shifted to certain days where we're seeing people in person, as well as virtual sessions for the drop-ins. And because that's been changing a little bit over the time frame of the pandemic, we would encourage you to make sure that you're taking a look at our website to ensure that you're referencing the most current service periods, just so that you're not showing up on campus on a day where we're typically seeing people virtually, and we may have a challenging time to try and accommodate you to see you at that point in time. There's also the ability to email us. We are quite on top of our emails presently, so I would encourage you to reach out to us that way. But if you do need a really quick response, oftentimes the best way to proceed would be to call us and contact us that way. And I think with that, we're going to move along to talk about some of the social media options. I don't know if Julie wants to talk about this, or if I
I'll
want
jump
to.
in there. These are our social media handles. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share a variety of information, news, join our community, find out more. If you wanted to learn more about the campus tours, the Spend a Day program, big info, more info sessions, or advising, there's a list of the links there. Don't write this down. You will get emailed the slide deck and a link to the recording. So you'll have that in your email in a few days. Our next slide after this, I think we're gonna go jump right into questions and answers. I'm not sure, but it looks like it was very active, and I don't know if there's any unanswered questions left.
Not sure if there was one that I responded to that I might have Denise comment on further. With clinical placement, I was trying to provide some details about how you guys arrange that with students, or how you go about that process.
So I think DJ put some information in the chat as well, but our clinical partners provide us with a certain number of seats in hospitals. And so we always use the same sites, and those sites tend to have the same number of seats. We're one of the only programs that actually has a clinical instructor at the clinical site. So, and again, as I mentioned before, this is a hospital employee who knows the hospital, they know the department, they know the protocols, they know the staff. And so when teaching a student, for us, that's the best fit versus, an instructor from BCIT going out to a site that they've not worked at before. So when it comes to actually placing students at that site, we usually provide students through a computer program to make up to 3 choices, so first, second, third, and then we run the program. The program has an algorithm that it goes through, and as DJ stated, usually the first go around, there's a good portion, I would say it's usually 90% plus that will get one of their 3 choices. Unfortunately, there are some students that do end up being assigned to sites they was not on their list. The second go around, usually, closer to 85% would get their choices. We always try and make sure that every student has at least one of their top 3 choices that they go to in one of their site selections. And again, a new piece when I was talking about the clinical is for us with our new program is actually 1 clinical term of CT. And so this might be at one of the 2 sites that you're assigned to, or it could possibly be a 3rd site. We're still working with our clinical partners to figure that process out. That's not until the 5th term, which is the last summer before the end of the program.
And I believe they use 5, unless we've changed it.
I think we're changing it. So, okay. And again, it's always a bit of a work in progress, trying to find a system that works best.
And if you are, in the interior and stuff like that, and or if you're in a more of a, I'm going to say, remote area, it depends on, it's an algorithm in the system. It's called HSPNet. And it's a site selector process. So you enter in what sites you want to go to, and you're kind of competing with one another to see who gets it. And if no one's applying for Vernon, then you might possibly get it. So it's kind of luck of the draw, but there's nothing you can really do to influence it. But there could be a likely chance that you could get it. We can't guarantee it, unfortunately, but there's a likely chance. There is a question, if you're taking post-secondary courses at TRU, will they send grades to us directly? So if you're taking the courses now, then you will need to submit your transcript, or you can apply with your midterm grade. And if you go to the BCIT website and type in midterm, and there'll be a form that comes up, and it's called, what's the form called?
Midterm grade submission, I think.
There we go. Midterm grade submission. And then when you complete that, there's some criteria in there. Like you have to be passed halfway through the course, and your midterm has to meet the minimum requirements, so whether it's 67%, 73%. So your instructor will need to sign off on that. And then you can submit that with your application, and admissions will let you know whether that meets the criteria for the entrance requirement.
Comment a little bit further to that scenario, in that with the credit-based requirements, specifically I'm thinking of anatomy and physiology, realizing that it's 6 credits in total that are required. If it happens to be that you're looking at 2 individual 3-credit courses, it becomes a little bit more complex in the way that the admission department will accept a midterm grade submission for that scenario. So my understanding is that they would typically be looking for the final mark from the first portion of the first 3-credit course component, and then a midterm grade from the second course, to be able to be submitted prior to the application deadline, and ideally with the minimum mark achieved in both the midterm from the second and the final grade from the first. So.
And then we were asked also questions about the competitiveness of the program, about the application process. So the process is called competitive. So that's what it's called. We also have I don't even know what the other process is called. So yes, it's competitive, but if you meet the requirements, we encourage you to apply, because and also there was also one other thing that Denise had mentioned before. I know we have a lot of questions about this normally, like if I completed my courses over 5 years ago, that's not mandatory. So don't be discouraged from applying if the course is over 5 years ago, that are the entrance requirements. You completed them over 5 years ago, it could be 10 years ago. But if there happen to be two like individuals and everything, all things being equal other than the 5 years, then we'll possibly consider the 5-year recency.
And it looks like there's one other question that's come in. Is there a chance that the application deadline will be extended again like last year?
Would you like me to answer that?
Sure.
So this is a new program and we've just started running it this year. And so there was a lot of changes that happened last year during the application cycle itself. And so we did, our application numbers were down. And so we did extend the application cycle then last year. So there was actually a second application window. We won't be able to tell if our numbers are where we hope they are, then there will only be one application cycle.
So there's always a chance, potentially.
Just don't bank on it, please.
Yeah, the short answer, apply.
Apply.
Yeah.
Definitely, for any program at BCIT, we encourage you to apply early where possible. If you have the means to, or if you feel you have the means to prove the requirements, certainly proceed with that application process. And certainly reach out to us either in program advising, or obviously there's some great contacts within the department for you to touch base with, just to clarify some of the aspects that you might be confused about or need clarification on. I'll also make another comment to say that, and I usually mention this in the information sessions, there's a great link on the program page below the requirements that says read more about how to meet BCIT's entrance requirements. Within that link, there's specifics about upgrading, assessment testing, equivalencies, additional details to clarify English requirements. So it's a great set of information that oftentimes is missed by those researching the program. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at the details within that link.
And with that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for attending. Thank you to Denise, DJ, and Jesse for this great presentation. And look out in your email for that slide deck and a link to review the session if you would like to. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.